Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So Boise State University announced that they're forfeiting against SJSU on Wednesday. And of course they were commended. They were commended for being brave, for standing up for women's sports, and essentially ending their season prematurely. There were seniors who gave up their opportunity to play in their last tournament. They gave all of that up to protect the integrity of women's sports, not just for them, but for other female athletes who are to come next.
The controversy over an alleged trans volleyball player at San Jose State continues this morning. Boise State's volleyball team ended their season with a forfeit last night rather than play the Spartans in the Mountain West tournament on Friday. The Broncos had already twice before boycotted regular season matches against San Jose State. The school did release a statement last night. It reads, quote, "The decision to not continue to play in the 2024 Mountain West Volleyball Championship Tournament was not an easy one. Our team overcame forfeitures to earn a spot in the tournament field and fought for the win over Utah State in the first round on Wednesday. They should not have had to forego this opportunity while waiting for a more thoughtful and better system that serves all athletes," end quote. San Jose State seeded second in the conference tournament. They got a first-round bye, and now the Spartans will advance all the way to Saturday's championship match.
And San Jose State University responded with a statement of their own, saying that they're disappointed that Boise State withdrew from the tournament. They said, "In this time of Thanksgiving, we are especially thankful for those who continue to engage in civil and respectful discourse. We celebrate and support all of our students, including our student athletes, as they compete for our community on this holiday weekend. While we are disappointed in Boise State's decision, our women's volleyball team is preparing for Saturday's match and looks forward to competing for a championship." And Mountain West released a brief statement saying, "Decisions to forfeit matches are at the institution's discretion and are considered a loss. San Jose State will advance to the MW Women's Volleyball Championship final." And San Diego State University and Colorado State University have both committed to playing against SJSU. So we have sports writer Dan Wolken, who decided to weigh into the whole situation. Of course, forgetting biology, of course, forgetting basic common sense, of course, forgetting what the female athletes have said themselves, putting that all aside to defend a male competing in a women's competition. And Dan's main argument is that this athlete is below average. This athlete isn't even that good. Of course, here we go again, saying that a bad male athlete equates to a female athlete. Once again, insulting the hard-working female volleyball players who are exceptional and made it all the way to NCAA level volleyball. Women who receive scholarships because of their athletic abilities get told that a bad male athlete or less than mediocre male athlete is the same as them. So Outkick's Clay Travis roasted far-left sports writer Dan Wolken, should be called Dan Wolken, on X Friday afternoon after Wolken demonstrated his usual disinterest in biology. Wolken decided to weigh into the Blaire Fleming controversy, where a transgender biological male volleyball player helped propel the San Jose State women's volleyball team to the finals of the Mountain West Volleyball Championship, helped along in part by the Boise State team's decision to stand up for its principles and forfeit, rather than jeopardize the health and safety of its players. One of the things that Dan loves to assert is that the women are not in danger. Never mind the fact that they themselves have said that they are fearful for their safety. Never mind that. They're supposed to forget about what happened to Peyton McNabb and pretend that it's perfectly safe for women to play against men, when we know that statistically, this is a fact, that if women play against men, if women play against males, they're more likely to get injured. How can anyone justify putting female athletes in that position in the first place, in a women's competition? So Dan Zashiski, he posted the story, he broke the story about the forfeit, and of course Wolken responded, saying San Jose State is 6-6 in Mountain West games that were actually played this season. If you had any doubt about the sincerity of this grift. The people who report this story accurately about the forfeits, about the fact that this team is progressing within the tournament who has a male player on their roster, that's a grift. When we know that a grift is to basically swindle people to gain money through illicit means. When really the people who are lying to you, telling you that a man can be a woman, telling you that it's fair for a male athlete to compete in a women's competition, if anything, they are the swindlers. They are the ones who are conning people, selling people a lie. No one's ever accused Wolken of being smart or anything but a left-wing grifter himself. But his criticism was too absurd to be left alone. So Travis posted in response, "So your argument at Dan Wolken is that men who compete in women's sports are only an issue if the men are on good women's teams. Left-wing sports writers have lost their minds and are competing to see who can be the craziest." And Dan didn't stop there. Dan went on to say that this person's serve is below average, essentially saying that this person is less than mediocre, yet has managed to make it all the way to NCAA volleyball, has made it all the way to this level, a level that this person couldn't obtain while competing against men, while competing against other male athletes in the correct category. Funny that.
And you have people that are allowing men to compete in these women's divisions and to obviously dominate, because going back to biology, men, of course, are stronger than women. They are always going to be stronger and faster than women.
It's like how Leah Thomas went from getting second place in a race as a man to winning the race.
Yeah, it's completely unacceptable, and it's fraudulent, and the people...
Exactly. Going from second to first does not happen naturally. Yeah.
And so I think... going
Leah
from...
Thomas, the swimmer who came in second place in
as a man,
Ivy
that's
League
right, yeah.
championships.
Yeah, and then he just switched his
And then
gender and suddenly was dominating.
Went from second to first. As someone who competed in athletics in college and high school myself, no one ever goes from second place to first place.
Okay, so if you, Leah Thomas was not in second place when he was competing with men.
He absolutely was. If you look at the 2019 Ivy League championships,
I
literally...
That is not true.
Look at the statistics. Ivy League championships 2019 men's division in the 100 free for both the prelims and the finals.
Okay, let me put it this way. Let's just... Maybe there was one race that he came in second place in.
The Ivy League championships is one
Okay,
race.
thumbs up. Riley Gaines, who has spoken about how she competed against Leah Thomas and it was not fair. Leah Thomas suddenly switching your gender, competing against women is not fair. I am open to Leah Thomas.
Say it's not fair.
Don't ask me a question and then cut me off when I give you the answer. It's just obnoxious. It really is. I am open to Leah Thomas and every other trans person having their own category at the Olympics and allowing them to compete. That is absolutely fine. Having their own category at high school universities, at high schools, at universities, everywhere across the country, and being able to compete. What I am not open to are biological men competing against women. If you want evidence that biological men will always defeat women, look no further than the actual Olympics and look at the time differences as it is when men are competing in a sprint versus women competing in a sprint, when men are competing in a throw versus when women are competing in a throw. If you don't want to acknowledge biological reality, I want you to lead the trans Olympics. I want you to be the person that establishes the trans events for people. Thank you for your question. There's more people behind you.
Okay. I love that your solution is separate but equal.
What? So we already have a, what? Your solution is separate but equal? What are you talking about? We already have men and women divisions, so is that separate but equal? Next question.
These activists cannot make up their mind. When people point out that Leah Thomas was 400 and something while competing against men, but then went on to win an NCAA tournament, went on to become number one while competing in women's competitions, they tell you that you're wrong. They tell you that no, Leah came second in a competition and then came first when competing against women. They talk up Leah's accomplishments. They forget to mention that Leah came second in a competition or tournament that wasn't anywhere near as elite as NCAA swimming. So on one hand, they tell you you're wrong when you point out that this person, this athlete is less than mediocre while competing against men. But on the other hand, they tell you you're wrong by playing down the ability of these transgender athletes, saying that these transgender athletes are below average, these transgender athletes are not a threat because they're not very good. So which one is it? These people can't make up their minds. They can't keep their story straight. But what we do know for a fact is none of these athletes are female. These male athletes who want to compete in women's competitions, none of them are female. Being bad doesn't make them female. Being an exceptional athlete doesn't make them female. None of them are exceptional. Male athletes do not belong in women's competitions. It's as simple as that. Whether you can demonstrate that this person has an advantage or not, it's a fact that they are not women. that they should not be in the women's competition. It doesn't matter whether male athletes plays on a good team or not. They are providing an unfair and unsafe advantage for whichever team they play on. SJSU might be 6-6 in Mountain West games, but where would it be without Fleming? Obviously, there wouldn't have been any forfeits either, which obviously helped them move along. San Jose State has clearly benefited competitively from having Fleming on its team, and as Travis pointed out in a subsequent response, this insane lack of logic could be applied to other settings and sports too. Would it be grifting if Little League parents deposed a 16-year-old playing on a 12-year-old's baseball team, if the team he was on wasn't that good? There are sporting bodies who don't require male athletes to do anything whatsoever to claim to be a woman. They don't have to lower their testosterone, they don't have to be on any medications, they don't have to submit blood tests. There are countless stories of girls having to compete against boys who were competing on the boys' team the previous season.
This is wrong on every level. These are not girls, they're boys saying they're a girl. They're playing a false sport, come back and play a girl sport and go back to playing a boy sport. All they have to do is change their paperwork at the district office. I'm not going to support it. I'm never going to lie to a kid. I'm going to support my wife, who was a pioneer in Title IX. And every other girl that's come along now expects every adult to do the right thing and protect them. We're not protecting girls now. K through 12 and women's sports. We're allowing men or boys to play in these sports. It's dangerous, it's wrong. We have boys in the locker rooms watching girls go through their get ready for practice or a match or a game. How wrong is that for a girl to have to endure something like that? What we would have called 5 or 6 years ago somebody going to jail is now acceptable in high schools and middle schools. This is absolutely wrong when a girl has to fear this, but she can't say anything. And if you're in a public school, at least in Oregon, you can't say anything or you will be ostracized, you will be put down, you will be shamed, and you just don't have a voice. People can't stand up and say anything, but I will. I'm going to say this is wrong on every level.
They come back and claim to be girls. They're allowed in a locker room and they're allowed to compete against these female athletes. And this is what happens when you advocate for men to play in women's competitions, on women's teams. This is what happens. There's no limit to how far this insanity can go. There are women who have all sorts of experiences because of this, and all sorts of traumas as a result, all sorts of injuries as a result of this, because of male athletes being allowed to compete in women's competitions, or knowing that they're males, but just accepting that they're women because they say they're women. So if you're going to go so far as to believe a man saying that he's a woman, why not give that same courtesy to the female athletes who tell you that they are in fear for their safety, competing against this person, who tell you that they've seen this person with abilities that far exceed the female athletes. This is what these women are saying. This is what has been noted in court documents. Female athletes saying that they are in fear for their safety. And the likes of Dan would dismiss these women and tell them that they're wrong for fearing for their safety. Dan will tell them that they're wrong for acknowledging what happened to Peyton McNabb. That Peyton McNabb is even wrong. They will have the audacity to tell her that she's wrong too. Because, women get injured when playing against women, so that makes it okay. No, they're more likely to get injured when playing against men. And what happened to Peyton McNabb, partial paralysis, being knocked out cold, happened because she was playing against a male athlete who had no business playing in a women's tournament, playing on a women's team. The fact is, if she wasn't put in that position in the first place, she would not be dealing with the long-term injuries that she's now dealing with, that she's been dealing with for years. And it is reckless, it is immoral, and it is outright absurd to put women in this position in the first place. They would take a man's word for it when he says he identifies as a woman, he is a woman. But they would ignore the female athletes when they say that they're in fear for their safety, that they don't want to play against a male athlete, they don't consent to it. They would ignore what comes out of their mouths, only believing what the male athlete asserts, when it is not based on reality, it is not based on biological fact, the science, the data, the studies, the fact that sports is in categories for a reason. They will ignore all of that and put their professional reputation on the line, make themselves look like fools, defending the indefensible. So Brooks Lusser has mentioned that she believes this person can spike the ball up to 80 miles per hour. Melissa Beatty Smoos as a coach, as an associate head coach, has said that she has witnessed these women in fear for their safety. And she has witnessed that this person has abilities that she hasn't seen with the female athletes. The ability to jump at a certain level that differs from the female athletes. The ability to spike the ball at a rate of speed that differs from the female athletes.
I feel like there's so many emotions that go into all of it, like anger, sadness, like regret, just like of all schools for me to end up at, why this one?
Brooke Slusser, a co-captain on the San Jose State women's volleyball team, is in her senior year, and she's getting more attention for what she's doing off the court than her performance on it, but she says she wouldn't change that. The Spartans' season has been overshadowed by controversy surrounding a transgender teammate who Slusser says she once lived with and called a friend.
I think all of me and my roommates were pretty good friends the whole time.
But Slusser says the two have never had a conversation about her teammate being transgender. Instead, she referred to it as the elephant in the room and says the university told her and other teammates not to bring it up.
I just don't think it's right in women's sports. It has nothing to do with the way someone wants to live their life day to day. That's not an issue. I think live the way you want to live. But just when it comes to the fairness and safety of women playing, there's a reason that there's two different divisions for men and women.
In a class action lawsuit filed last week, Slusser claims her rights and safety have been jeopardized by sharing a court with her transgender teammate. When asked about how and why she felt unsafe, Slusser said,
"The height that the person can jump is so much higher, and honestly higher for a man. It's insane. And then the strength behind the ball when they're swinging is also just so much more powerful."
But her transgender teammate's stats don't appear to give the Spartans a dramatic upper hand. The San Jose State women's volleyball team is ranked 119th nationally. But nonetheless, Slusser claims safety is one of her top concerns.
There's many times for multiple people all the time that we're having to try and dodge the balls that are coming straight at our face. And I've been hit multiple times by the balls, and I've had bruising on my legs just from trying to dodge it, and it catches my thigh, and I've had a bruise on my thigh for weeks.
But Dan said the following. The scouting report that Boise State paid for from an analytics company said her serve speed was below average. And my response to that is, if this person is below average, that tells you that women's sports is being used by mediocre athletes, by less than mediocre athletes, below average, to propel themselves to a level that they couldn't achieve while competing in a correct category, while competing in the men's competitions with other male athletes. They're using women's sports to propel them to a level that they couldn't achieve fairly and safely. A less than mediocre male athlete has no business taking the place of an exceptional female athlete. To compete at this level, you have to be well above average if you are a female athlete. And I doubt there are many spots available. I'm sure they have to work very hard to get to the level where they have reached. But a below average male can come along and reach those same levels simply by identifying as a woman. And you're calling us the grifters? You're calling the people who know biology, basic biology, the grifters? There were male athletes who received scholarships, who took scholarships from female athletes, from well-deserving female athletes, simply because they identify as a woman. And if that doesn't tell you that there's an advantage, I don't know what will. Because clearly, they are able to get to this level simply because they are male and have a male body, been through male puberty, and have the athletic ability of a male athlete that a woman can't have because she's female and is built differently. Yes, there are some women who may be able to spike the ball faster or whatever, or harder on occasion. But on average, this male athlete is going to have an advantage. All you have to do is look at the records. Women do not have records that are comparable to the male athletes in the men's categories. The records are not comparable. And on top of that, this person gets to compete with a lowered net. If they lowered the net in the men's competition, you would see a clear difference in the pace of the game. It would probably be out of this world. He's a dude. Stop insulting women by calling men women. Serves are routinely quite slow for everyone, especially depending on the variation of the serve. Not a measure of anything physical whatsoever. The ease of movement and jumping is the advantage. So, the reason we have women's volleyball is because they are entirely unable to compete with the men. So we have one male who also can't compete in the men's team, but the policy being contemplated is not okay. Middling men can play with girls and only them. He still does not belong in female sports, no matter how bad he is. Female sports is not meant for mediocre male athletes. Totally irrelevant. If a drug cheat still isn't any good at their chosen sport, is it still okay that they still take the place of a legitimate athlete? And imagine having a man that spikes the ball at 80 miles per hour and you're still 6'6", LMAO. Except she doesn't. Don't be gullible. He, don't be gullible. I have to like that. Someone said, you know, mixed volleyball is a sport. What does that have to do with a male athlete competing in a women's competition? Give me a break. When Serena Williams played against a man who was ranked 203 while she was number 1 in the world, she lost miserably and didn't even win one game. He won very quickly. But yet there's mixed doubles in tennis. Absolutely ridiculous. At least that person's admitting that we are actually blurring the categories when we allow transgender players to compete in women's competitions. That's exactly what is happening. You're blurring the categories. When these girls signed up to compete in a women's volleyball team, in a women's volleyball competition, that's what they signed up for. And then you tell them that, oh, actually, boys can play in your competition if they say they're women. So after Dan said San Jose State is 6'6" in the Mountain West Games, blah, 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 someone said, we should consider the team's record before we decide if men can play on a women's sports team. Dan was responding to Riley Gaines' comment where she said, sarcastically, we're thankful we steamrolled everyone all season, but disappointed you didn't let us steamroll you, when SJSU said they were disappointed. Looking at this based on biological fact, you have a team with a male player, even if that player is mediocre or whatever, you still have an advantage. You've got somebody who isn't in the correct category playing in a women's competition. It is cheating. There is no way around that. Whether the person's serve is below average. I mean, they went undefeated for a period. You don't have a leg to stand on when you try and convince people that somebody who's male can play in a women's competition. Any team in a women's competition that has a male player is cheating. It's as simple as that. Because on the team, they have somebody who shouldn't even be playing in a women's category. The question is this person female? And we know the answer to that. SJSU certainly does not have the moral high ground when it comes to this issue. And there's a reason why this is going to be banned eventually. Because it's simply wrong. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves and God willing, I will see you in the next video.